It's been over a week since Austin Dillon celebrated his controversial race victory in Richmond. Since then, NASCAR has penalized Dillon and the team and taken away their playoff eligibility. RCR filed an appeal with the National Motorsports Appeal Pannel in hopes of becoming eligible for the playoffs. But RCR has only received bad news. But they're not giving up. They're now planning something big to get back their playoff eligibility for the 2024 playoffs. After the Richmond race, NASCAR said they would discuss the incident on Tuesday and hand out penalties if required. On Wednesday, NASCAR released their decision for Dillon to retain the race win, but he would lose his playoff eligibility and dock the team and driver by 25 points each. Although Dillon retained his race win, it meant nothing as he was not qualified for the playoffs. To receive more latest news on NASCAR like this, subscribe to our channel and join a community of only die-hard NASCAR fans. Don't miss out on the action. RCR filed an appeal for the decision. After discussing it, the National Motorsports Appeal Panel decided not to reverse the original penalty. But RCR is not satisfied with this as well. They released the following statement. Childress Racing is disappointed in the results of today's hearing in front of the National Motorsports Appeals Panel. We respect the NASCAR appeals process, but we do not believe that today's outcome reflects the facts presented. We plan to appeal the decision to the final appeal officer. The final appeal officer has the authority to overturn the verdict of the penalty. But why should they? Let's first understand what happened during the race. During the race in Richmond, Austin Dillon was actually having a good drive. During the restart for the final 2 laps, he was leading the pack with Logano alongside him and Hamlin right behind. As the race resumed, Logano was able to get a better start and take the lead, but Dillon had no intention of giving up that race win. During the final lap, Dillon went on to rear-end Logano and took him out of contention. Dillon then lost a bit of momentum, allowing Denny Hamlin to make a move for the lead. But Dillon had already taken out one driver to win the race. What's one more? As Hamlin came alongside Dillon, the RCR driver hooked and sent him spinning into the wall. Just before Dillon wrecked Hamlin, a radio message was heard from one of the members of the number 3 crew, shouting, "Wreck him." This was later confirmed to be Brandon Benesch, the spotter for the number 3 crew. Austin Dillon had clearly crossed the lines as he took out the 2 cars. After the race, he had pretty much admitted to doing so intentionally. He said, "I don't know, man. It's just the rules of the sport, right?" Dillon said, "It is what it is. Wins get you into the next round. I did what I had to do to cross the start-finish line first." After NASCAR's decision, Dillon will lose his playoff spot for violating Section 12.3.2.1.b of the NASCAR rulebook, which deals with playoff eligibility and states, race finishes must be unencumbered by violations of the NASCAR rules or other actions detrimental to stock car auto racing or NASCAR, as determined in the sole discretion of NASCAR. Explaining the decision, NASCAR's VP of Competition said, "I think in all due respect to the appeal process, we looked at this and the totality of everything that happened as you entered Turn 3, and as the cars got to the start-finish line," Sawyer said. "So as we looked through all of that data, we came to the conclusion that a line had been crossed. Our sport has been based going for many, many years, forever, on good hard racing. Contact has been acceptable. We felt like, in this case, the line was crossed." NASCAR also suspended the number 3 crew's spotter, Brandon Benesch, for the next 3 Cup Series races. Explaining the decision to suspend Brandon, Elton Sawyer said, "If you look at the crew chief and you look at the spotter and view them as calming voices in the driver's ear, in this case, we just felt like we've all listened to the audio. We know exactly what was said. We just felt like that's not what we need spotters doing. That's not what we need from a crew chief sitting on the box. They're a calming voice to what the situation is in front of them, and they're supposed to be spotting for the race, not making comments like were made, as we all know." But when RCR filed the appeal for all the penalties towards them, the National Motorsports Appeals Panel did decide to reduce Brandon Benesch's suspension from a 3-race ban to a 2-race ban. This means he will only miss 1 more race before returning to his role. NASCAR obviously does not want their spotters to yell out, "Wreck him," as it shows unsportsmanlike behavior within the team. Right after the race, Childress was confronted about this radio message, and he completely denied its existence altogether. "I didn't hear him, and I was on the radio with him. We'll see. If he did a damn good job at it. He won the race." Childress seems to have no problem with his spotters asking their drivers to take out other drivers just for the race win. This seems unethical. In a sport like NASCAR, the officials have been quite lenient when it comes to forcing sporting rules and regulations. We have often seen them let things slide. During the All-Star race, we saw NASCAR not penalize Kyle Busch for taking out Ricky Stenhouse Jr. in the very first lap of the race. But this time, NASCAR has decided to penalize Austin Dillon and RCR. Richard Childress could also face some backlash for his statement, as he basically approved of the Wreck Him message that was communicated by one of his employees to Dillon. These penalties will now set a precedent for the teams and drivers going forward. Now we'll see the drivers be more cautious while battling for the lead of the race. This incident was more in the limelight as it occurred during the final lap, and Logano, Hamlin, and Dillon were contenders for a race win. If this incident had occurred during the middle of the race, we might not have seen NASCAR hand out these penalties. This penalty for RCR means that they have lost their playoff berth, which they thought they had secured in Richmond. In addition to this, NASCAR has also docked 25 points from the team and Dillon in the points table. All the hard work they had done has been lost. However, RCR can still get into the playoffs if they win another race. But the problem with this is that there are only 2 more races until the playoffs. Given that Richmond was strong for the team, they will be looking for circuits with a similar layout as Richmond. Among the 2 races remaining, Darlington is probably the most similar. However, that's the last race of the season, so if RCR is planning to win that race, it would be another Hail Mary for them. But coming back to the incident at hand, looking at the facts, there's no doubt that Dillon intended to wreck both Logano and Hamlin to keep that race win. But RCR continues to deny and protest against these penalties. This seems to be a very stupid PR move, as these appeals keep the team's unsportsmanlike behavior in the spotlight, and they will continue to receive bad press because of it. If you look at the tweet on RCR's page stating that they will appeal to the final appeal officer, everyone in the comments know that RCR is in the wrong here. There's not a single comment that states that RCR is doing the right thing. The best thing for RCR right now is to let this thing go immediately. Just accept the loss and move on. Here are some of the comments from the tweet. You embarrassed our sport with that move, then doubling down on it. Just take the L. Keep appealing, it's sticking. You don't get to drive through people for a playoff spot. Just take the loss and move on, guys. Everybody disagrees with you that it was a fair win. Like that last comment read, everybody disagrees with RCR. Anyone can take just one look at the replay and say that Dillon intended to wreck Logano and Hamlin. At this point, RCR knows that they will not be able to get another race win during this regular season, especially with just 2 more races to go. Because of this, RCR is doing everything it can to reverse NASCAR's penalty. If Dillon does not qualify for the playoffs, the team will not only lose the chance to race for the title, but they will also take a huge financial loss. In NASCAR, teams are paid based on which position they are in the points table, and whether or not they qualify for the playoffs. Denny Hamlin thinks RCR will lose about $2 to $2.5 million due to the penalties preventing them from participating in the playoffs. With this fact, it makes sense why RCR is trying so hard to get that penalty reversed. However, it doesn't change the fact that the penalties were well-deserved and justified. In fact, some believe that the penalties were not harsh enough. Do you think the penalties towards RCR and Austin Dillon were fair or too fair? Post your thoughts in the comment section below.